the guy tied it to my roof of my car. And I'm like, I'm with a Christmas tree. Like, it was just so funny. And I went back to his house right away. I literally was back there within 45 minutes. And I called him from downstairs. And I was like, so-and-so, please come down. And he was like, is everything okay? Why are you back? I mean, I'm a social worker. Like, what's going on? I go, just come down. So he comes downstairs. I will never forget, as he's walking to my car, he's like, Miss Gittel? I'm like, yeah. Do you see your tree? Do you like your tree? Let's get your tree in the house.
Als men komt van Sevastopol, is niet weit van Simferopol, dorten is a stanze voran. Werd afzoeken, eigenlijk is a stanze aan Antikel in Jacoye, Jean. Hey, Jean, Jacoye, Jean, Billy, Jacoye, Jacoye, Jean. Hey, Jean, Jacoye, Jean, Billy, Jacoye, Jacoye, Jean. En verkieden auf mein Kasche, wie's mein Bruder, wie's a Brasch, es geht bei ihm der Traktor wie a Bahn. Und mit mir Meile mit der Posilt, mit Bele Bader, Molla Tilke, in Jacoye, Jean. Hey, Jean, Jacoye, Jean, Billy, Jacoye, Jacoye, Jean. Hey, Jean, Jacoye, Jean, Billy, Jacoye, Jacoye, Jean. Sagt, dass jeden kennen nur handeln, essen fette Joch mit Mandeln und nicht sein kein Arbeitsmann. Das kennen suchen nur die Sonne, jeden Speize ja im Korn, und tut da guck auf Jean. Hey, Jean, Jacoye, Jean, Billy, Jacoye, Jean.
Welcome to Extra Sauce. My name is Chaim Cohn. You just heard Hey Jean Koya, sung by Martha Shalami. My guest tonight is Gittel Follman. Gittel is a wife and a mother. She's also the director of social work at Brooklyn Defender Services, where she's been working for the last 20 years. For the last 17 years, Gittel has also worked as the associate director of the Living Room in New York. I think this interview is a perfect example of why I love podcasting. We all live amongst greatness. People who are quietly engaged in life-changing work, in work that is really nothing short of divine. And I think we owe it to ourselves to hear from them. And now with this nice nifty thing called podcasting, we get to do exactly that. And we can do that while driving or doing the laundry. So I'm really grateful that I had this opportunity. I get to be the beneficiary of hearing from Gittel all the time, but she has a lot to share, and I'm sure you'll enjoy this. So here's Gittel, and reminder to subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Google, Spotify, Stitcher. We're also on SoundCloud. And if you like it, then go ahead and please give us a nice review on Apple Podcasts. Hi, Gittel.
Hi, Chaim.
Did you watch part of that CMA Shas yesterday?
I watched the entire thing.
Really?
I wanted to go. I think I've gone to 2 CMA Shas's.
Oh, wow.
And, since I moved to Muncie and I've been on the Muncie bus, I've heard them do it every single day for the past 3 months that I moved. And I'm thinking, I'm part of this.
Oh.
But also, I think that there's something powerful being in a space with all of these Jews doing something and coming together in a way that feels so real and honest. And I just was so touched that when my sister sent a live stream and I watched it, and I was home yesterday because I had off of work and I was watching it for hours. I mean, I was really moved. I cried. I was taken in. I was like, I want to start learning Shas. I felt that it was something that was super powerful. Right.
Yeah, I watched bits and pieces of it in the car while I was driving yesterday. And then, so I have a few questions. So first of all, you said you've gone to 2 of them in the past?
Yeah.
Do they have place for women there?
Absolutely.
This one yesterday, they had
absolutely. For sure. There's a lot of space. My mother was there with my sister-in-law and my niece. If I would have coordinated the tickets, I would have been able to. I think it's the upper levels. maybe 2 upper levels all the way around. There's space for women, sure. I was in
That's
Madison
nice. I
Square
didn't know
Garden.
that.
Yeah, absolutely. And yesterday they did a lot of like Hakar Satov to the wives and to the families, where there was a real recognition that these men can't do all of this without a woman behind them, either pushing them or allowing them the space to be able to leave the home to go and do it. And I thought that that was super powerful. They may not show our faces, but they do say thank you. So
It's a perfect segue for my first question. So
I figured I'm trying to help.
Yeah. All right, you already know where I'm headed. So does that work for you? Meaning, how great are our Ashes Chayil that they let us do our thing, and they allow us to, they stay home with the kids so that we could do the real work?
So I'll tell you, over years, I've had more or less of a love-hate with that placing of where I'm supposed to be. But honestly, I would say in the last 7 to 10 years, maybe closer to 7 to 5 years, it feels good. It feels right. It feels okay. Maybe it's because I've gotten married, and so it's all coming together as a wife and as a mother. But I understand that the woman needs to be the Akeres Habayis. She needs to be putting a home together. I think I come from a home. I'm very lucky that I have a very stable mother and father that have a very clear vision of what they wanted for a family, and I knew what a productive, healthy home looked like. And so when you have a woman who understands that her role is to bring Torah and Kedusha into a home through the things that she's able to do, it could at times even far surpass what a man does. We're really charged with bringing a Masorah from a top generation down to a next generation. And if we stop that, then our children are not carrying on just Frumkeit and Judaism and real spirituality. And so I think once I had the kids, it became much more crystallized. And so I truly, truly believe it. So I don't need to be front and center. I need to be in a space that I'm able to create a home that has spirituality in a happy way, that has Shabbos in a way that my kids enjoy, that there's a feeling of they're part of something that's bigger than themselves, that God is tangible, that it's not negative and angry. And so I'm very happy being in that space. And I think that the more that I own that space, the more that people respect the fact. And so they do come to me for more things. So sitting at the top of like MS, where was it yesterday? Not in
MetLife.
In MetLife. So sitting at the top bleachers as opposed to the floor, it's fine. It's still a part of, and it's acknowledged. And I think my mother really like embodies a lot of that. And so for me, it's not foreign. And once the children are there, it's like, oh, I got it. It all comes together. I think when I was single, I was more so struggling with this idea or like grasping to be seen and to be heard, because older single religious girl is kind of like, they don't have a spot, they don't have a space. And that was painful. And now, and I've done a lot of thought about like, how can that group of women be recognized and be seen and be acknowledged? But now I feel very secure in the spot, like, and the position that I hold.
Mm-hmm. And that kind of sentiment is, I think, recognized. And you hear the same thing in general society, where women, while they're post-college and in their career as a single woman in this, new way of life that we have, will often speak very critically about the patriarchy and systemic patriarchal ways of life that are still present. And then all of a sudden they get married and they have children, and without acknowledging it necessarily to themselves or others, they all of a sudden seem to be a lot more comfortable with, at least to some degree, the way their mother was. And it just kind of an intuitive awareness that people have that this feels right. And at least though it's coming from a place of choice, though, meaning they have the ability and access to be achievers on the outside, but they're choosing to be wives and mothers.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder, though, if within the frum community, and I know that's getting better, but since it isn't so much presented as an option, it's more like an assumed, future, that women can be robbed of the ability to like affirm for themselves that this is what they want to be doing.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And it's hard because we don't also have, I'm saying I'm acknowledging that I'm no longer in that space, but there's still always a part of me that like, I didn't get married till I was 36 and I moved out of my house at 24. So there was a large chunk of time that I was on my own. I think a part of a problem also is that there's nothing, if you were like a girl like me, where I was religious, but I also had 2 jobs and I wasn't running to shiurim and I wasn't, what do you hang your hat on that says I'm a part of, that says I'm staking my claim and I'm around? Meaning a boy from the time of 13, there are things he can do that he could be visible for. And so there's nothing like that. And so it's almost only once you hit, the chuppah that it's like, I've arrived. And it can't, So it is very, very difficult. And it is something that I think we could maybe work harder at trying to figure out how we could give the recognition and give them the visibility that they need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think in that respect, it's very similar for guys, single guys. See, I'm 32 and I have a circle of single friends that are around that age. And what we're realizing kind of reluctantly is that whereas friends of ours who get married, and like you said, once you're under the chuppah, it's like life is for real now. Mm-hmm. You have to like really affirm what your values and what your plans are. And when you're single, you kind of have the liberty of not doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be a liberty, but could also be something that keeps...
Detriment, yep.
Yep. Part of the reason I'm moving a little bit out of where I lived for the last 10 years, kind of give myself, and I think it's a good thing, give myself the ability to like, even if I'm not married or in a relationship, to be able to affirm for myself, how do I want to live?
Yep. It's a big push.
Yeah. And I've noticed friends of mine also who have been realizing, like, not that they're hanging it up and don't have plans to get married, but while I'm in this space, I need to be able to affirm for myself. And I think that's a good thing.
Absolutely.
Because it's just a way of life, that life isn't for real. You're not a man, you're not a woman until you're married, until you have children, until you have a home. But it's almost like pushing off the need to affirm for yourself who you are by virtue of, well, who do I have to be for this other person?
Right.
So now I don't even have to think about it anymore. I'm not going to divulge particular people, but I'm thinking about a few, within my sphere, who did that. And the motive, the burning motive to get married, was clearly coming from a place of, if I have to hang out with myself alone anymore, I'm going to have to find out what's going on.
That's right.
But if I could just kind of get into this whole thing, I may be able to push that off and continue pushing that off. And to some degree, certainly when it's like emotional or psychological stuff, it's going to come up sooner or later.
Absolutely. Yeah. The ones who got married, like typical, young, whatever, they did their growing together. I used to be insanely jealous because how lucky were they? They didn't have to think. I couldn't stand the fact that I had to think. I had to deal with it. Mm-hmm. Why did they get a free pass? They didn't have to deal with it in time. They do have to deal with it for sure, because once you're living with somebody, it comes up and that person's different than you. And so of course they have to, but not in the same way that I did alone. And at certain markers in time, my friends' kids being bar mitzvahed, their children or certain milestones where it brings it up in such a way that it's like jarring, because I also had a social circle that kept me at times when I needed it, incubated, and then when you have to come out of that like incubation or that bubble, it's really, really painful.
So that's a long period of time. I assume you had friends that were getting married around 22, 23 or so.
I did have friends, yes.
Right.
I'm kidding, yeah.
Right. So that's a long period of time to be with yourself, even with the 2 jobs and everything. So what did that...
I actually had 3 jobs then.
Wow.
Yeah.
I want to get to all that soon, but since we're already in this space, things are not going to go in order, obviously.
No problem.
But so what did some of those transitions look like when you had to be doing those for yourself, by yourself?
I'm really, really lucky that I have really very, very good friends from high school, from Baltimore, and then like 2 very close friends from there. And then when I went to seminary, I made 2 very close friends. And without that social network and my sisters and my brother, during that period of time, my parents were more like my punching bag. Like, I don't mean physically, I mean my emotional dumping grounds. But without that, like, community around me of those individuals, my siblings, and these 4 really good friends, I don't know necessarily how I would have survived that time. They allowed me to evaporate, like when I just wanted to disappear. They allowed me to show up on whim when I wanted to. They traveled with me. They like indulged me in those spaces. At the same time, also giving me kicks in the asses of, Gittel, you need to go to therapy. I mean, I'm a social worker, so I believe in the mechanism, but at times I'm just kind of like, I can't, I'm exhausted from my own self. But, you know, with like careful nudging and prodding, they would like move me in a direction. Also, when they would have life moments, they would include me in their life moment. So it wasn't as if I was like a hanger-on in their space when my friends were having babies. I was a part of it, you know. I was helping set up, or it was like, Gittel, when are you coming? I can't wait like for you to be at the simcha. So it wasn't like I felt like relegated to like a corner or something. But I do want to tell you that to people, let's say in the next circle out, I didn't necessarily go to their events because I couldn't. So.
And how about in terms of like your belief system or hashkafas? Like, so you were in a space where you had to affirm your belief system or your values for yourself. Mm-hmm. Did that change from, let's say, when you came out of seminary till 36?
So I wouldn't say it changed dramatically. I've always kind of been somewhat like the way I am now, but there were definitely times where I had I did not have rose-colored glasses on. I'm only laughing because a very good friend of mine always wears her rose-colored glasses. I was angry. So, but I always knew that God existed, and I am a very spiritual person. So there were times or years where like I wouldn't even daven brachos, or like and I was like, it is what it is, and that's fine. I wasn't angry at myself necessarily about it. I was angry that I was kind of like put into this position at this moment in time. But then I am fortunate that I have good friends that I was able to talk to these struggles about. And so one of my friends recognized that I needed a way to connect to God. Like I needed a tangible way to connect to God. And it wasn't going to Shirim. And for me, a cathartic way, like I always love going to the Kotel or going to Kvarim in Israel and just taking time and sitting there and thinking and davening, not necessarily from a sitter, just my own thoughts. When I say davening, just my own personal prayer to God. And so for a very long time, my friend's husband used to go to a lot of Kvarim in Eastern Europe and Poland, I mean, all of Russia, wherever. And so they would take me along on these trips. So I was fortunate to go to the Baal Shem Tov and to Lezhensk and to all these different places, and like, from a Wednesday to a Monday, and we would just go to, I don't know, 10 to 15 kvarim, and I was able to just kind of like get it out and be like, do you see me? Here's what's going on for me. And I used to like say, okay, I'm going to dead people with pull. I don't know. Like, I knew it wasn't them. It was a way to be able to concretize an emotion and to be able to like communicate it out to a higher being.
Pull for what?
For anything. It was pull for anything. It was for me. It was for my family. It was my grandparents at the time, for health. It was for whatever was needed in that moment. Obviously, 90% of it was for a husband.
Mm-hmm. So then you were actively seeking and desiring to be married throughout that period for the most part? For
the most part. Sometimes less.
This is going to be a very inappropriate way to, but since we're like working on a time thing, so what happened? I know it's like So I'm in that position now, so I know how silly that question can be, but
so what happened?
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I was living by myself.
Clearly a very capable, maybe that's often the case, that people are overqualified in the scene.
Well, the thing that drove me bananas was that I felt like my life was a dichotomy. A little bit still it is. I could get to that in a minute. But here, Baruch Hashem, I was successful at work. I was able to maintain relationships. I had friends. And yet I couldn't get dates off the ground. It was just bizarre. Like, it just wasn't working. I didn't understand why it wasn't working. So, like I said, I was in and out of therapy, but about a year, maybe a year and a half before I got married, I went to a therapist, and the only thing I said to him was, I need to use this time to peel back and unpack what is holding me back from getting married, from being able to figure out how to build a successful, productive, healthy relationship with a man that ends in marriage. Like, I don't want to talk about my mother unless, and if my mother listens to this, unless it relates to getting married. Like, I need to be so singularly focused on this. You
didn't want to rehash the problem. You wanted to...
Exactly. And I didn't want to be in therapy to the end of time with this. I wanted this to be like open and closed. Like, this is what it was. And so he totally understood. And I went to him for a very long time. But the thing that really just was my quote unquote rock bottom was I was invited to a meal. I'm not saying where, I'm not saying who, whatever. I was actually the youngest woman there, probably by about 5 years. I got there Friday night, and it was, I think, an even split, maybe like 7 women, 7 guys, like something like that. And we were all waiting, like it was Friday night, we're waiting for not one guy showed. Now, it wasn't my meal. I was invited, and I hated going to these things. I hated it. And that's also where my friends were huge. They came with me to single events. My married friend would come with, she did great at these events, but they would come with me to single events. And so, right. So anyway, so not one guy showed to this Friday night meal. And
I think by the way, the order of it is some kind of like really invasive surgery and then like a single event, like a setup Shabbos meal.
I agreed.
Okay.
Right. So we went forward with the meal and cleared the table. And then it became this, it wasn't guy bashing, but it was a subdued negative space.
It's got to be uncomfortable.
It was uncomfortable, yeah.
To acknowledge that we want this more than the guys.
Absolutely. And it wasn't like it was one guy, one girl. Like, it wasn't like there were supposed to be 5 to 7 guys walking in. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
So first of all, I felt terrible for the person that organized it. Like, my heart broke for her. But as the meal progressed, it just got even more depressing because the rigidity of the women and their age started coming out. There was nothing to censor them. And I remember thinking, Laman Hashem, get me out of here.
It's like it wasn't an elephant. All there was the elephant in the room.
Exactly. And it was so uncomfortable at 100. Like, I can't even think of the word, like, you know. And so I started getting quieter and quieter because there was also a large age gap, there was a 5-year gap between me and the other women. And so I started retreating. I felt it. I felt myself pull into myself. And I, like, right when dessert was served, I was like, thank you so much. I'm not really feeling so well, because I literally was not feeling well. And I was like, I need to go. Fine, no problem. So I left that meal and I went home to my empty apartment. And Friday night in the winter, I think like January time, actually. And I got into bed and I was sobbing. I was sobbing with every fiber of my being. I was like, God, please, I cannot last another moment. These women scared, am I let it occur? The shit out of me. Like, it became so, I'm an experiential learner. It became so real that if I don't get my ducks in a row in a minute, I'm fucked. Like, I couldn't. And so it was a moment. It was a real moment. I gave people a lot of chances. I'll go out. Like, you don't want to go off me? Are you sure? I'll go to you. Like, I just was like, whatever it takes. Like, I'm in it.
If nothing else, so I never have to turn into that.
Exactly. Like, there was a fire in me. Like, I was determined. And then I'll never forget. So I knew Moe for years beforehand. Moe's 7 years younger than me. And we actually were not talking at that point. We hadn't spoken for months at that point. And I was out to, and then in February, what is it? President's Day or Lincoln's birthday? One of those days off. I had off from work. And I went out with a friend for lunch and Moe called me. And he hadn't called me, and I hadn't spoken to him in forever. And he was like, hey, Gittel, what's going on? And I was like, hello? Like, what? And he was like, I know you have off of work, because when we were friends and we would hang out on days I had off of work or something, go to the movies. And he was like, you're doing anything? And I was like, not really. Like, I'm finishing lunch with my friend. And so he's like, you want to hang out? I was like, okay. And organically conversation came up, and he was turning 30. And in my previous life, like before this, I never would have contemplated somebody that was that much younger than me. And I was like, okay, like, what do I have to lose? You know, let's try this. Let's see what happens. And I went back to my therapy. I think, like, this was mentioned on, I think, Moe, whatever day that was. And then I had therapy maybe 2 days later, and I went to my therapist, and I was like, the craziest thing happened. Moe reappeared, and this conversation happened, like, organically. I didn't force it. I didn't ask. It just, what do you think? And he was like, typical therapist, what do you think, Gittel? And I was like, oh God. But I was like, why not? Let me try. So one date, and if it's not good, then I wasn't speaking to him for months before, and I'll never speak to him again, okay? And it worked. And when they say, like, kaharafayan, it was like, what? Literally from like a Monday to a Tuesday, everything changed.
Sounds like, no, sorry.
No, and I mean, there's another aspect of the story behind this, which people know, but a lot of people don't know it's us necessarily, but so this very good friend's husband, who I mentioned, who goes to a lot of kfarim, around that time went to Rev Amram Ben Zuan's kever. And he happened to have gone with like 70 men for whatever reason. And at Reb Amram Ben Zuan's kever, he made a mishaberach. He asked everybody to make a mishaberach for me to get married. And a rabbi who I know very well said that he like flung himself onto the kever. Was like, please God, let Gittel get married. Like, everyone knew me, and I was just like around. And shortly after that trip, Moe called me, and I've asked Moe 100 times. And other people have asked him, what possessed you to pick up the phone on that Lincoln's birthday, whatever it is, to call Gittel. You hadn't spoken to her in months. Why did you reach out? And he said every time, I don't know. I'm not even sure. So people knows.
When you talked about that night, that Friday night coming home, even though it was followed by a level of commitment that you probably didn't have before, there was also a desperation and
Total
kind
desperation.
of a hopelessness that preceded that.
Mm-hmm.
And so often that is the Kaylee, for lack of a better term, for the blessing, because while we're trying to force or be the vehicle of whatever it is we're seeking, we're forcing something that doesn't let us receive.
Right.
That kind of, screamed out to me a bit more. What did you have that feeling that was the case, or was it like from a level of resolve?
It could have been both. Mm-hmm. Giving it over, resolve. Yeah, becoming that Kaylee. Yeah, it could have been a combination of all those things.
Right.
Yeah.
I believe that there's I've experienced this myself, not with something that dramatic, but I will actually notice things that I haven't for years following an episode of giving up. I once heard someone say it beautifully. He was divorced, and it was a messy divorce, and his daughter didn't speak to him for like 8 years. And that was like his only thing he ever wanted, and he tried every which way to get through it, and eventually he just completely gave up. And he said it once this way. He's like, I realized then, and he completely gave up. Shortly thereafter, she just randomly called him one day, and he said, if I'm going to have anything, I have to become completely willing to live without it. And so what I realized was, once I kind of admit I don't have the wherewithal, the control, the ability, at least the way it seems, somehow opportunities appear where they otherwise didn't. Anyway, so I believe that it may happen in the form of energy, to the degree that even someone else on a subconscious level is like, I don't know, with certain energies is now aware of that. Anyway.
Yeah. Who knows? It's pretty crazy. Yeah.
Okay. So we didn't get into much back. You grew up in Baltimore?
I was born in Baltimore, grew up there, lived there until I was 24 years old. Went to Beis Yaakov, Baltimore. Then I went to seminary, Machon Devora.
Where's that, in Israel?
In Israel, by Vagan. It's no longer around. And then I went to like a community college that first year when I came back, just to kind of figure out what I wanted to do, BCC. And then I went to University of Maryland, social work, undergrad, grad school.
Was it just like the thing to do, or you wanted to do that?
So I did not want to do it. I was never a good student. I was a horrible student. My mother ended up coming to teach in Beis Yaakov in 7th grade, and that's probably the saving grace that got me through high school, because I was not a good student. And I really did not know what I wanted to do. When I was younger, I didn't have like that foresight of like looking forward, being like, I want to do that. Like I was living like, okay, Monday, Tuesday. Like I was not that organized of a kid. But one thing that I did know that I did well, and it was and it was almost like the only thing that I could kind of hang my hat on was some reason whenever anybody had a problem, they would talk to me. So whether I would set myself up in the back of the Beis Yaakov library and I would talk to people, or I was in the bathroom talking to girls, it seemed like I was always able to see through, or to see the person, to see what the problem was, and to give them like, oh, do that, and that will fix it. And people come back like, Gittel, I did that, and it worked. I was like, oh, look at that. I don't know. It was something that I had. So then when I came back from seminary, and I just was drawn to the psychology classes, I knew that I needed to go to college. That I knew. Past that, I didn't know. I knew also that I'm not cut out to be a teacher. I'm not cut out to work in a store. I actually worked in a maternity store for about I don't know, 6 months. And that was crazy. Like no customers came in. It was insane. But anyways, I used to try on the clothes and the belly, whatever. It was insane. But I just gravitated to like the psychology classes. But then it was also like, well, what am I doing with psychology? Like, I don't want to go for my PhD. Like, I didn't think I could do that because I wasn't a strong student and I wasn't a good writer. And I just didn't see how all this would come together. And then I forgot who steered me towards social work. It was a place where I felt like, oh, I understand this. This makes sense to me. It was a combination of things that I was good at, but then also giving people tangible goods. So like social work is like really being there for people in the trenches and helping them through like crisis moments and things like that. So, I mean, there's much more to it, but I'm just saying like, this is how it talked to me at that point then. And so, that became the trajectory through undergrad and grad school while my friends were getting married. And a little bit like I couldn't believe that like I graduated grad school and then like I got a job and then I'm still going. I used to joke with a friend of mine, like, this wasn't the plan. The plan was to be a stay-at-home mom. How do I have a career and you don't? But
what was your first job within social work out of school?
So I worked while I was in social work school. There was a group home down the block from my house through the local JCC that was for mentally ill adults, men and women. I think, how old were they? They must have been like upper 30s, 40s, and 50s living in this home. And I was a counselor in the home. And I remember thinking, what are they doing? They should not hire me. How can I give out meds to these people? I don't understand what's going on here. Because I was still so fresh, but they did. And then that segued into, they also had scatter sites and I would see clients in their homes and help them with like daily living. And so that really was a very good foundation because right from the jump, I was dealing with individuals who are suffering from schizophrenia, extreme borderline, bipolar, and so it was like I was just thrust into the 10 feet with all of that. And I learned a lot from that. So I did that all through undergrad and grad school. And then I had internships that you have to do while you're going to school. And so I worked in a law office as a social worker. I worked in a hospital as a social worker. And I worked in a school as a social worker. And the thing that I always knew was I liked crisis, like I fed off of the crisis. And I also liked being a social worker in a host setting. I did not want to work in an agency. I did not want to work in an outpatient mental health clinic. I did not want to work in a drug treatment facility. I wanted to be a social worker surrounded by other disciplines. I liked that element of autonomy. I liked it. Like, I got my thing going on. You got your thing going on. You don't go in my lane. I don't go in your lane. Let me just do my thing. And so when I moved to New York, after I graduated, I was looking for interdisciplinary spaces to practice social work. I was offered jobs in agencies, but I didn't take them. And I got a job at Legal Services for New York City. And I was like, this is what I want to do.
So that was your first job within social work?
First job.
And you're still doing that?
And I am still doing that 20 years later. Consistency.
So before I ask about that, I didn't know about all these other things that you did. So you've worked in so many different capacities within the field of social work. And I'm curious to know how were you able to not just step up, but like be so versatile and obviously a lot of those things differ in terms of what's necessary. I guess there is a humanity that so long as you bring that to the work that it somehow translates regardless. Is that? Yeah.
I mean, that's a part of it. I don't like seeing people in pain. Like my heart hurts sometimes when I see people in pain. I wanted to be a helper. I wanted to ease others' pains. I wanted to help people navigate their way through systems and their life and to walk alongside people while they're in it or struggling.
So one question, I'm going to cut you off before we get into your primary job. I've heard that you say this in one form or another in the past, where no one gets involved in any field of social work or mental health if they aren't a natural helper. Right? That they don't have this overwhelming, not just desire, but need on some level to be doing that, whether it's in a career or otherwise. And yet, that overwhelming need can so often get in the way of doing exactly that. How does that work, and how does one navigate?
How do you balance the boundaries, you're saying?
Not just so much the boundaries and transfer and stuff, as much as how do you make sense of it in terms of, I'm only capable of being effective because I so desire and need to be doing this work. And yet, if it's coming from that place, I can so easily get in the way of this individual doing the work that they need to do if they're going to be any help to themselves.
I think that that's a lesson people learn in time and while they're practicing. Early on, I was a victim to my success, that I was like, oh, I got this. I'm going to take them through it. They're going to succeed. Okay, Gittel may change for you. I forgot when it was specifically that I realized that's totally false. And that will lead to burnout and lead to me actually being a very bad social worker. I think maybe, I don't know, between years 1 and 3, I figured, like I realized that, and it got crystallized for me that if I don't bring a higher power, God, I consider God, into the space of the work that I do, then I'll never be successful. And once it clicked, I worked very hard. I think now a little bit it's more like second nature, to always bring God into the room, no matter what I do. Like and I've said this to many people at different points, when I opened the door to the office building, 177 Livingston Street, where I work during the day, in the morning, I'm like, Hashem, please help me today. I don't know what's coming down the pike. Please help me get through the day. When I open the door and I hit the steps to my night job, I always throw a prayer up. I'm like, Hashem, please give me the words. Because there's so many times where I'm like at a loss. I don't know what to do. It's like my mind is blank. And then all of a sudden it like comes to me. It's like, it's so true and real to me that there's something working through me for this person. And so what ends up happening is it's not about Gittel. It has nothing to do with me. Whatever successes the client has in that moment or forward, they own it. On the flip side, which also makes it easier, is that if they don't succeed, it's not my fault. I've done what I could. I really try. I try, I want to bring my whole self into the space. But if they don't get it for whatever reason during the day, if they don't go to services or get the resources and then they lose their children, it's not because I failed, or God forbid at night in my night job, if something happens and someone doesn't, take the opportunity to get the help or go to outpatient or inpatient or whatever. Again, I didn't fail. I'm trying my best. For whatever reason, there's a larger plan, and they're on their journey. And that has been the thing that sustains me, really understanding that I walk beside somebody and there's grace with me and there's grace with them, and they're doing the work and I'm illuminating a path. Awesome.
I was talking about something similar with a friend last night, and I had a realization while I was talking about it. It's like, I definitely know that I'm most effective for myself and others when I'm living in this place of being a channel rather than trying to force something.
Absolutely,
having
100%.
God's love flow through me for this other person rather than trying to create it for them, for myself. But the realization was that a barometer, and that's a barometer of where I'm at. When I feel like I'm forcing rather than being a channel, I know I'm off the beam.
Exactly.
Where if I start,
you're totally off kilter. Yeah.
So, how do you stay on the beam? You mentioned the prayer before you start.
Yeah.
But on an ongoing level.
I mean, I basically do that every single day because I never know. In my day job, we serve 35,000 clients per calendar year. I never know what any one day is going to bring. Every day could be something new. And so I always have to be like, God, help me. But it's also through, I mean, besides that, and I have my own therapy, and I use my friends and family as a sounding board. And I try, but it's hard, to be perfectly honest, that when I'm away from work, I try to be present in the other spheres, like being a mother and being a wife. But it is really, really hard because my jobs are not stuck in 9 to 5, and they do spill over. I get together with friends. I used to have hobbies. I love tennis, but not anymore. I haven't played in a long time.
So there's an interesting thing where, as unnatural and as unkind as it feels to turn off when there's a crisis going on, it's ironically the very thing that would help that individual.
Well, I don't turn off when there's a crisis. If I'm directly responsible, I don't turn off when there's a crisis going on. I get through the crisis.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the opportunity arises, yes, then try.
Yeah, it's like a very acute, serious, like present crisis. But I mean, let's say just an average troubled situation that happens on an average day, you're going home, you could easily get overwhelmed with it, I imagine.
Sure. Yes. I also like reality TV. Really bad reality TV.
It's crazy and it's like the stupider it is, the more it sucks you in.
Exactly. Yeah. I have watched stuff coming out of the South and just
you ever
crazy
watch this
stuff.
Crazy show? I'm embarrassed to say it. And like my roommate, we watched it accidentally, and then it became a thing, and it was the worst show ever.
What show?
And we didn't even want to tell anyone. I don't have cable anymore, but this is years ago.
This is a safe space, you could say. Yeah.
No, I forget it. Laser licking towing. They repossess cars. There are 3 guys in the South. Something lizard licking.
I've heard of it, by the way. I've heard of it. I never got into it, but something that I used to watch. And because this is a safe space, there was a show called Dance Off, Pants Off.
Oh.
It was crazy. There would be music, and there would be a guy or a girl, and they would like take off their clothes. Not everything, but it was just like they were so uninhibited, and they were just like taking off their clothes. I was like, this is insane. And so like I'd watch crazy crap like that. Also, excuse me, like pageants, crazy stuff like that. And then there was a show out of the South where I forgot it was called Turkey Trot. I don't know. Women used to like, it was like a pageant, but they would hold a board in front of them, and the front of the board would be a turkey, and you would just see their legs. I don't know, like crazy stuff. They were wearing clothes, but I don't know. It was just like, it was just...
Yeah, you can't help it.
Right. It was just...
It's like really, really bad candy.
Yeah.
I once accidentally bought a Good and Plenty's at a gas station because it was the only kosher candy. And I didn't like it. I don't like black licorice. But then like, I'm going to get through this entire box.
Right.
And now, almost every road trip, I buy Black and Milds, even though I don't like it because I feel like I have to see it through. Like a bad movie.
Right.
Facebook is the worst. When they have the videos, it automatically goes to the next one.
Yes.
And I'll use it sometimes to wake myself up in the morning.
It's like a black hole.
Yeah. And like, I hate Gordon Ramsay with a passion. I find him deplorable in every possible way. And then I'll just go another. I could watch 10 in a row. Like, what is my life?
Yeah.
All right. So what was it about the legal services, the social work within the legal services that got you felt like home?
So, when I was in grad school, I had to do an internship, and I worked in Towson Legal Aid, and in
nice town.
You know Towson?
Yeah.
How do you know?
One of my favorite cigar shops in Towson.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, and
That's so
what's the university? They're really pretty.
University of Towson.
Yeah.
Right. Or Towson University, whatever. Right. Oh, that's so funny because people are like, they never know. So I was placed there in the unit called the CINA unit, Children in Need of Assistance. And that was kids that were in foster care. And we needed to make sure that wherever their legal needs were, I was working hand in hand with the attorneys. And so I had that experience. And like I said before, I worked in a school and I worked in a hospital. I love that my father's a lawyer, my brother's a lawyer. Honestly, I never thought I was smart enough to go to law school. I also didn't really want to go to law school. So, that was fine. But I was proud of the fact that I was working in a law office. It felt like there was an element of a connection to my brother and my father and things like that. And there was definitely a level of crisis. I actually did not like working in the school at all because, I don't know, it just didn't talk to me. By the time that year was over, I was happy to leave. But I very much enjoyed working in the hospital and working in the law office because that fed that need of learning, because I learned a lot about legal and I worked interdisciplinary and there was crisis and I was busy and I was constantly moving and I was able to be seen and visible because the judges would talk to me and they would be like, okay, Ms. Kagan, what do you see? What's your assessment? Things like that. And so I also, when I moved here, I applied to work in hospitals and I did get a job, but ironically it was in the Bronx and that was too far for me at that point, even though now I travel an hour and a half every day to work. But so I got the job at Legal Services, and there was the office that I got the job in was, it was called Legal Services for New York City, and it was a Brooklyn branch. And they just opened, or maybe a year before that, they opened a branch of their office in Williamsburg, working out of the UJO, United Jewish Organization, with Rabbi Niederman. And so they were working on helping those individuals with benefit work and housing. And here I am, a religious girl coming from Baltimore. I don't speak a word of Yiddish, but I'm a religious girl. And they needed to staff that office with at least somebody who could connect or relate to the community that was coming in to deal with their housing and benefit work. So I have a lot of hakaras hatov to Steve Bernstein that he hired me, because I did not know a thing, not one thing, about benefits in New York City, because I was educated in Baltimore. There's differences. I didn't know anything about how the system worked here, and I had to learn it in order to help the community. And I worked there for about 2 years. I learned a lot, but then it got to be a lot. And I was like, I need a change. I felt isolated in Williamsburg.
Right. And then you went for this.
So then what happened was, when I went back to Steve and I said, I cannot be stuck there anymore, I need something different. He said, okay, there's this grant, KFT, Keeping Families Together grant. And I could put you on this grant within our office, and then you'll work with attorneys throughout Brooklyn branches, legal service offices in Brooklyn. And you'll be the social worker working with 5 or 6 attorneys. And the whole idea is to represent parents who have abuse or neglect cases against them. We'll pick our clients, and you'll advocate. The attorneys will be in court, and you'll advocate for these individuals when they have ACS conferences or foster care conferences, and work to make sure that the parents are doing the services that they're supposed to be doing, get all that information back to the attorneys so the attorneys can present in court that the parents, quote unquote, have been rehabilitated, that they've gone to anger management, drug treatment, therapies, what have you. So I built up a network of providers, and I was advocating for clients at these conferences that were happening that kind of paralleled their court dates, and I'd get that information back into court through the attorneys. And so it was exciting. It was different. I was working all over, I worked out of my car, and I just kind of was going to a lot of different ACS offices, and I learned the system by myself, and I was making contacts, and there was a real change that was happening for people in their lives. And people's kids either were pulled out of foster care because of work that we've done together, or people's children were they were
Mm-hmm.
stopped from continuing in foster care, or prevented from going in.
So I would imagine you have a lot of stories from that long period of time. How many years from when you started?
So I started in 2000.
Oh, wow.
And I have a lot of stories.
So if I had to ask you for one very sobering story, maybe even like a reluctant realization within the work you were doing, and then one like hopeful and something that gave you a degree of optimism and inspiration for the work you were doing.
I mean, unfortunately, I could work alongside attorneys and we could present the most incredible case, but the judges are the ones that make the decisions. So unfortunately, a lot of people have lost their children, and it's very emotional, because what I have learned is that it doesn't make a difference what color, what nationality, where you come from. A mother is a mother is a mother. A father is a father is a father also. And when you lose your kid, something inside of you dies. So it's really, really sad. And I've seen also children being ripped from their parents' arms, and it's gut-wrenching. And the screaming of the kids, it's like it's horrific. It's so painful. So those are the bad moments. But the positive moments are, of course, the big moments when a parent has their child back, or somebody, gets out of Rikers or something like that. Those are like the happy moments. But the thing that as a social worker that I think sustained me actually are the small moments. The moments when somebody has said, I want to have a visit with my child on their birthday, and we're able to make that happen. And I'm watching a mother and child, having that birthday moment together. I could live off the fumes of that for 6 months. Something that just popped in my mind that I remembered that I laugh at, because as a religious girl growing up in Baltimore, I grew up very sheltered, and so here I moved to New York, and I'm like, I'm in the Bronx, I'm in Bed-Stuy, I'm in Greenpoint, I'm in all these different neighborhoods, and I'm just I'm constantly in housing projects. And I went to visit a father who had supervised visits with his daughter, and I went to watch this visit to see the interaction, because I was going to do a write-up on it and bring it back into court and whatever. And it was I think right after Thanksgiving or something, and he was great father, and he loved his kid. And after I finished and the daughter went off into another room, he said something like, I wish I had a tree this year, or I wish I was able to have a tree, or make the apartment more festive, or something like that. And I was like, I hear, maybe when I get back to the office, because I know there's a lot of providers in the city around the holiday time that help out with presents or things like that. Let me see what I could do. And this is not in my normal practice, but I was driving down Flatbush Avenue, and how they have all the tree stands. So I was like, all right, if I'm able to find parking on Flatbush Avenue, I'll find out how much a tree is. And there's never parking on Flatbush Avenue. Bam, that time there was parking on Flatbush Avenue. I get out and I'm laughing. I'm like, I'm a religious girl. I'm about to ask how much a tree is. So I go to the guy. I'm like, how much is a tree? The guy's like, I don't know, whatever, however much it was. It happened to be that I had that kind of cash in my pocket when I never have cash. And I was like, all right, I'm buying a tree for this guy. And I remember laughing, because I'm like, is this considered Mara Zion? What? How bizarre? Of course not. But how bizarre is this? And the guy tied it to my roof of my car. And I'm like, I'm with a Christmas tree. It was just so funny. And I went back to his house right away. I literally was back there within 45 minutes, and I called him from downstairs, and I was like, so-and-so, please come down. And he was like, is everything okay? Why are you back? I mean, I'm a social worker. What's going on? I go, just come down. So he comes downstairs. I will never forget, as he's walking to my car, he's like, Miss Gittel? I'm like, yeah. Do you see your tree? Do you like your tree? Let's get your tree in the house. And he was like, I can't believe it. And I was like, it's my pleasure. Have a good holiday. I mean, it was nothing. It wasn't crazy expensive. I was like, I hope this makes a difference. And I don't know, things like that. Not that I buy people things usually at all. It just felt like a moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I have a Christmas tree story talking about singlehood. So I was sitting with my roommate. That's a beautiful story and everything. I did not acknowledge it. I just want to fit this in. Well, so I'm sitting with my roommate in my kitchen once, and we're like, we're definitely going to get married in the next year. So, and I said, like, I really always wanted, I like Christmas a lot, and I like the Christmas movies and everything. I said, I really want to get a Christmas tree just once in my living room. This is probably my last opportunity. So the next day I drove by one of those places, and I bought one, like a fairly large size one. It was next to my parents. And I parked in their driveway and sticking out of the trunk of my car. And I was
They're like, Chaim, firewood for us? We have no chimney. Yeah. We have no fireplace. Yeah.
Anyway, they didn't see it, but I took it home. We really decorated it nice. And
with sukkahs decorations?
Yeah. And then I had a friend who was a very fierce religious guy, and he defaced it with toilet paper later that night. But anyway, it was really nice. But the premise was that we had to do it because it's our last year single. I think that was 9 years ago, though. I've been to I haven't done it in years, but I used to do in the summers, go as a volunteer for an Aleph organization to prisons. I've probably been to some 45 prisons. And that was very sobering. One of the things I walked away with saying to myself was like, oh my God, everyone who's ever done anything on any scale of not just criminal, but immoral, from minor to major, is a victim. And in some ways, I would never look it up before, but I got back to the hotel and I looked up, I couldn't resist after. And so often it was the most severe crimes where they had the most severe stories.
Severe trauma.
So it's like, oh my God.
That's right.
And two things. I mean, a great sadness and sobering realization for the state of humanity. And then the other thing is, like, if I make victimhood the be all and end all, I'm basically giving the rubber stamp of approval on whatever follows from there.
Right.
So there has to be something that goes beyond that.
Yeah.
Unless if we're going to have a civilized world. And the message was more for myself, was if I continue to make the expectations of myself contingent on the degree to which I can be past my very valid victimhood, then maybe not in that form, but in self-destructive or other forms, that will be my trajectory,
It's you're saying it's 100% right. See, the problem is that people get defined by the action. The past trauma in childhood needs to be taken into account. I do agree there needs to be an element of accountability, but I don't want it to be necessarily so harsh that the person is forever branded and then doors are shut on them. And so you're trying to always balance what is the true, quote unquote, punishment. It's a horrible word, to the thing that they did. But when you start peeling back the layers, and I learned this much more, I learned this a long time ago, but in 2013, my office merged with the Brooklyn Defender Services. And so they are a public defender's office, and they serve and they represent the clientele in Brooklyn Criminal Court and in Supreme Court. And so once I started working with individuals who have felonies or misdemeanors, you really see that so much more, because the clients that I worked with that are in family court, those individuals are not incarcerated. It's abuse and neglect, primarily neglect because of poverty. And I truly, truly do believe that people that are black and brown are targeted, and those people live in certain neighborhoods and they're policed harder than other people. I have seen too much empirical data to sway me from that no matter what. So much so that like one time when my son, when he was very little, his shoulder got dislocated, whatever, I had to take him to the hospital. I bring a stack of my cards with me. I just left it by the hospital because I know that some of the clientele that's going to walk through there, while they will not call ACS on me, they will call ACS on somebody that looks different than me. And so whatever, I just like keep them there. I don't even know what happens with it, but I just feel like whatever. And I get it, hospitals and mandated reporting and all of that, that's fine. But getting back to the other piece, it's like there's also circumstances and there are reasons why individuals make choices. And I agree, they're the wrong choices and there's repercussions and there's outcomes. But then do we say that you are just that action and then there's nothing more for you? I mean, I feel like we have an element of tshuva in our life. Like, when do we allow somebody to try to make changes? And so I do think the system is very punitive. You know, there's a lot of different thoughts and feelings I have on it. This is not a black and white issue. It's not something that I have totally even flushed out. But I do feel like there has to be voices that hold the line and hold governments accountable so that it's not just pure chaos and locking people away forever.
In Judaism, we talk about chesed shebegvura, gvura shebechesed, right? That if God originally created the world with just justice, and it imploded, right?
Correct.
And the same goes for chesed, because there was chaos.
Correct.
Just in a different direction. You know? We see examples of that in every form. You said something very beautiful. I remember that reminded me a little while after I did the prisons, and there was another few situations that I caught myself writing something after one of those trips. I wrote, if you take out redemption out of the world, I want no part of it. Because it means like the whole thing is, and that's the premise from a Jewish perspective of like the whole deal. And it's embedded in every part of what we do.
Yeah.
And I believe fundamentally that doesn't, just because it's within our heritage and our teachings, that applies to every person in the world and every society. And yet, I was thinking about it this way, right? If you take out the ability for an individual to do tshuva, to redeem themselves, then what's it all worth? And at the same time, if you have that, and if it's real, if the ability to rectify and redeem oneself is real, then what you're also saying is that there is choice, there is autonomy.
Yes.
And that means there's also responsibility.
Correct.
And you can't have one without the other.
Right.
And as far as like
that's the general population. I'm not talking about someone who is severely mentally ill, because mamish, they don't have control over it, and it's very, very painful to see, but it doesn't excuse recent behavior, and I am still trying to wrap my head around that. Or people that are severely cognitively delayed.
I remember I mentioned something about not looking up someone's history till after, but 2 different years I went for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur to different federal prisons. And between then, with how seriously made tshuva, I looked things up. But when I came back, with, I don't think any exception, I hugged every one of those guys the same way I did before I knew. And sometimes it was pretty severe.
Yep. Because once you talk to somebody and they're no longer a number, or they're no longer like a docket or something, and you look in their eyes, they're people. And so you get a different perspective of that individual. I mean, it doesn't mean you forget.
Right. Something scared me immensely that I saw this time and again, just about every institution I went into, the guards scared me more than any of the prisoners.
Absolutely. It's petrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
they do damage.
yeah, really.
They could do damage. Yeah.
But one time, so we davened Shachris and then Mincha and Ma'ariv, and we had Ma'ariv, or maybe it was, we did like an early Ma'ariv, and then we were packing up, and one of the guys says, no, we're going to leave the chairs here for tomorrow because we're coming back to pray in the morning again. And mind you, so the guard let us in, and he was hanging out. And it's amazing how these guys, they do nothing. They do nothing, and they have to channel all this energy in like really sadistic ways. And he told the guard, in a very calm tone, he's like, guys, wrap up the chairs. And he's like, no, actually, we're doing the services tomorrow morning. And that's all I saw. I came the next morning, and this guy was kind of like the gabbai there. And I asked, where's that guy? He's like, he was put in the shoe. He's going to be there for the next. I was like, why?
They called it a shoe in federal. I don't know what they call it in federal. Like the hole?
The hole, yeah. And solitary confinement.
Solitary,
So I said, why? Because he told that to the guard.
Right.
That's it.
That's right.
That's
why my office actually worked very hard to end solitary.
Yeah.
Because people who have very little power, who only have power in a very controlled space, abuse their power and throw people, and they're not being fed, they're not being taken care of. They are left to their own devices. And it's very, very scary.
You mentioned your work in legal services, but you've also done a significant amount of work with Our Place in the living room.
Yes.
And how did that get started?
So probably about a year after I moved to New York, a girl that I knew from seminary was a volunteer in Girls Our Place. And at that point, they needed a women's social worker for Monday and Wednesday night. And I came in and I was interviewed by Schiffer Glantz. She runs Girls Our Place. And I got the job as being the on-site social worker for the girls program. And I saw people individually. I did crisis work. And I enjoyed it. Back in Baltimore, I also worked with teens. And so it kind of like, it allowed that to continue for me. And it also was a space where I felt like I was able to give back fully for the frum community. Even though in my day job, unfortunately, I do have religious clients come through, this was more like a passion project, and not project, a place for my passions to be. And so, so I did that. And at the same time, Our Place, there's Girls Our Place, Boys Our Place, and they had at that time what was called Judas Place, which was a drop-in center, different than TLR now, but it was a drop-in center for young adults who were working on the recovery and trying to maintain sobriety. And there was a guy that was running it, but there were women that were there, girls that were there, but there was no female presence there. And because of the affiliation, I was asked to see if I could go to Judas Place and be there. Totally without any instruction, just go there. And I remember I was like, I don't know what to do. So while, let's say, the people that ran the organization were like, Gittel, you go, the actual person that was there did not want me being there. And so kind of relegated me to the back, and I sat by the bathroom, and I slowly had to make relationships with the women and the men that were there, but I didn't really have a role, and it was just kind of weird in the beginning. And so I did that probably for about, 6 months, 9 months or something, maybe a year even. And so Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I was working either in Girls Our Place Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, whatever it was. I was in Judas Place. And once he left, I continued and I stayed on, and they brought on, Menachem Poznansky, and he's amazing. And so I've been doing this work ever since. What
has been your most significant realization or discovery in working with addicts over all that period of time?
Oh, it's a miracle. They're the strongest people that I know. the fact that they are able to make these incredible life changes. I get so emotional. There are times at anniversaries, people don't see, I sit in the back, I cry. They don't realize the strength that they have inside of them and how great they can be. And the fact that when you see somebody working a program and really taking and really working the steps, they're super, super strong.
So the bulk of that work is with Jewish people.
Yeah.
Young Jewish people particularly, and often that involves the family of, even though you're not delving into acute crisis situations, but you have a pulse on that. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And
well, the bulk of that work before I got married for about 10 years, was that I was working with the women and keeping the women connected. It was very important to me because the guys always had
a natural ability.
Exactly. And the women, just because, women and how they were kind of disconnected. So I ran a Tuesday night women's group for 10 years straight. Mm-hmm. Every Tuesday night, I had a women's group. And looking back on it, it's like, wow, talk about committed to the commitment. Like I was there, And that group overall was an open group that if somebody came, they were welcomed into the group. At times, I did have it closed for like 6 weeks at a shot if we were doing like we were on a specific topic, and I would have an arc maybe about like relationships with your mothers or bodies or whatever it may be. But overall, that group became something that really kept the women together as a very, and I learned so much from them also. But that became a space where the women were really able to connect and become a real core part of TLR.
Your most significant discovery since becoming a mother?
How much love I have for another person.
What brings you joy? Give me one thing.
When I'm a really joyful day is when I'm with my husband and my kids. And we're not necessarily doing anything major. We're just together. It could be a drive. It could be going to the movies. It could be just spending time together. That brings me real, real joy. Mm-hmm. And my son's sitter play yesterday brought me joy.
What would you tell to a 20-year-old Gittel? I know it's a very cliche.
No. It's important, though. It's going to be okay. Because 20-year-old Gittel, like I said earlier, I wasn't planning one day to the next. I had zero foresight of what's going to be in the future. Like I couldn't do that. I didn't know how to do that work. And so I was living in a little bit of a state of panic. So it's going to be okay. You will get the swing of this life. You will know how to work through your worlds. You will know how to build relationships. You will be successful. It's going to be all right. Hang in there. That's what I would say.
And I didn't realize you were that old when you got married.
Wait, you were that old, Gittel.
Right, yes. Right. I didn't mean to put the emphasis on that.
No problem.
I know some women who are close to that age or around there, and they're
what would I say to them?
Deeply hurting around the how real it is and how close they're getting to the possibility of not having children.
Yes, it's petrifying. By the way, petrifying. Yep.
What message would you have for them?
Number one, I would say freeze your eggs. I know this is not where you wanted to go, but about 15 years ago, I wanted to freeze my eggs. My mother was appalled. She was horrified. People don't do it, blah, blah, blah. But I saw that you got to figure out a way to do it. It turns out I didn't do it, and I regretted it for other reasons for podcast number 2, because I have more stuff to say. But take ownership over this state. That's part of the thing. We don't feel like we have ownership or visibility. You own your body. Take ownership over it. I'm not being facetious when I say freeze your eggs. There's very little that we're able to kind of take control over. But this allows you a space of empowerment that you're saying, I don't know when and I don't know how, because it is out of our control. But this is something that I could do if I have the finances. And now there's also a lot of organizations that help out with that. that if you are able to do that and you take that step, it's scary, it's hard, it's painful, it's physically painful, it's emotionally painful. But if you're able to do it, you have a space that in the future, when you do meet that person, you're able to continue on, you're able to have a legacy. And so that would be something that I would say. I would also say, keep talking. Don't keep it bottled up inside of you, because when it stays inside, the pain just becomes enormous. If you have people to talk to, speak to them about it. They will be receptive. They want you to be happy. Let them know when things are bothering you. Let them know when you're feeling a little bit off. Let them know when you're uncomfortable. They will excuse you. They will allow you to be you. Communicate. Really, really talk. So that's what I would say.
One last question. We talk here and there, and I hang up the phone. I'm like mind blown.
Mm-hmm.
And you have a keen insight that like is very, very deep. And a lot of the times the conversation revolve around something that we touched upon, which is acknowledging our limitation,
Mm-hmm.
particularly when it comes to interpersonal relationships and helping people.
Mm-hmm.
And what's most unique about how you often express it is how not just related, but one and the same is acknowledging my limitation, acknowledging my humanity,
Mm-hmm.
acknowledging that I am not God and
Correct.
cannot control, and how that so freely flows directly into the ability to actually have an impact where I can. I know I kind of said it, but can you speak to that for just 1 minute?
Can I speak to that whole concept for 1 minute?
Yeah. Okay, 2, 3.
How? Sorry.
In terms of how that, whether someone is in a field of mental health, social work or not, how it just relates, how that concept and that truth is how that truth is so necessary for everyone within their own individual life to embrace their limitation.
Well, to embrace their actuality, to embrace and to know who they are, and to embrace the fact that they're present and connected to self, to not pretend that they're more or less than.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you have an idea of your capabilities, to be okay with those capabilities, the shortcomings and the positives, and to just use that as a force to propel you forward. Hopefully it doesn't move you backwards, but if it does move you backwards, being like, it's okay because it's part of the process. I'm not giving carte blanche of I don't got to do anything, but it's an understanding of I'm moving in a direction. There's, a process here. And sometimes because of my God-given talents, capabilities, or sometimes chesronos, I'm able to move forward and backwards, but I'm not going to beat myself up about it. I'm going to say it is what it is. It's okay. The next time I'm faced with something, I'm going to try to do it a little bit better than I did it before. But I'm going to acknowledge, these are at times my limitations. And it's not bad or good. It is.
How many children do you have?
I have 2 kids.
How
I have
old?
my son, Nash, is 6.5, and my daughter, Leora, is 4.
Nice. Where did you get the name Nash from?
His name is Nachum Shimon,
Mm-hmm.
and he's named after my grandfather, who I love dearly, my father's father, who was definitely like a Renaissance man and knew how to do a lot of things, super smart. And so his English name is Seymour Nathan, and I was like, what are we going to call him, whatever. And my father-in-law is actually the one that came up with the name Nash, and I was like, perfect, that's what it's going to be. Of course, my parents and my in-laws were appalled, and I was like, nope, that's his name, Nash. And it stuck.
I'm happy you mentioned grandparents. Usually I don't get 10 minutes into a podcast without finding out who someone's grandparents are.
Mm-hmm.
Could you give me...
Briefly who they were?
That may take too long, but give me which grandparent were you closest with?
So I would say I was definitely closest with my 2 grandmothers. My mother's mother died when I was 15 years old. So I knew her as a child, but they lived in Baltimore and I saw them on a regular basis and I watched soaps with my grandmother. And my bubby was European, and she was very, very smart woman, very smart. My mother's also very, very smart. And I remember I always looked up to her, and she had the softest skin ever. And I love my bubby very much. My father's mother, my father's parents are American, and my grandmother, I was close with her as an adult also because she only passed away 5 years ago. So she saw me through a lot of life experiences, and she had tremendous wisdom, and she was a woman of grace in a way that I definitely want to emulate. But she also gave me tips for life, and she's like, everything is going to be okay. Like, don't make it harder than it is. And so one of my biggest things were, I was like, I want her to see me at the chuppah. Like, it was something that was real. And the fact that I was able to do that and she was at my wedding meant the world to me. And she met Nash, so that meant the world to me.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Gittel, thanks so much for doing this.
My pleasure.
Hope we can do
Thank
it
you,
again
Chaim,
sometime.
for sure.
Ich bin mir am Mädel in die Jorn. Was hast du mir dem Kopf verdreht? Was hast du mir dem Kopf verdreht? Ich wollt schon lang a Kalle geworden und öfter Tage Hassene gehabt. Ich wollt schon lang a Kalle geworden und öfter Tage Hassene gehabt. Und Tomer geht es dir in Naden, die Mame wird verkäufen die Stieb, die Mame wird verkäufen die Stieb. Da lass mir beide Chassene haben, weil ich hat dich so lieb. Da lass mir beide Chassene haben, weil ich hat dich so lieb. Und nefscher geht dir ketzale in Jiches, mein Seide ist gewesen a Rof, mein Seide ist gewesen a Rof. Mein Tate ist gewesen der schönster jeden Städtel und soll schon nehmen a Sof. Mein Tate ist gewesen der schönster jeden Städtel und soll schon nehmen a Sof.